And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, a man who's more wit than Bobby Witt, but not as much wit as Bobby Witt Jr. He is. How you doing?
Doing good, Karen. Bobby Witt, son of a major leaguer, right? Grew up pretty wealthy, one of the greatest athletes in baseball, art in pro sports, like how fast he is. This guy looks like he just crawled out of the woods or something. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I mean he's a joy to watch. He's a joy to watch, and he's a guy that even if you're, let me just put it like this: if you have the DraftKings app and you have to put a bet on a guy on the other team, you feel pretty comfortable doing something with Bobby Witt because normally he's going to do something in the game. And we're recording this Monday morning after the Tigers took 2 of 3 from Kansas City and obviously swept Houston earlier in the week. And I kind of wanted to start with this being like, actually, it was a relatively crucial week. Like, you don't want to overhype stuff. It is still August, but Houston's a team that you're fighting with for that bye. And I think that bye is crucial. We've talked about it. And they're still hungry and they have a lot to play for in their division. So it's not like they have the same level of comfort as the Tigers. And then Kansas City is the team that's hot, that has supplanted Cleveland as a number 2 team. They're obviously in the wild card discussion as well. But look, anything can happen, as we saw with the 24 tie. So this was a week that the Tigers, I think, had to, like, it wasn't going to be over, but kind of had to take care of business, put a stranglehold on the division, and then earlier kind of separate themselves a little bit from the Houston Astros. And, like I said, 2 hungry teams, 2 teams that, are in either were playing good ball or in desperate need to play good ball. And the Tigers kind of took it to them in a variety of ways. So probably as important a week as the Tigers had this season, and they took care of business.
Yeah. You can look at the standings. The Tigers lead this division now by 10.5 games, which is kind of ridiculous. They are back to a double-digit game lead, though. There is plenty of cushion. You can't take that for granted, but I'm still viewing like everything through the lens of, can this team win the World Series? And I think that leads us naturally to the bullpen, probably this team's biggest vulnerability, biggest weakness going into the second half. It has been undoubtedly better in August, but I'm not sure what to make of it at the same time. Tigers relievers in August have a 2.93 ERA. That is the 3rd best in baseball. Their ERA entering the month had been over 4 for the season. But then as we talked about last episode, this is a good thing, but a lot of that, I think, had been the product of having starters going deeper in games, of leaning a lot on Kyle Finnegan, who has been very good, and Will Vest, not having to lean on your non-leverage guys so much. We hadn't seen Tommy Kahnle for 9 days until yesterday. He threw a scoreless inning. It was good to see. We hadn't seen Rafael Montero in a while. The eye test remains rough, doesn't throw a lot of strikes, but he got out of there unscathed. But you dig into some of the metrics on these relievers, Kieran. Their FIP is 5.08, which is the 4th worst in baseball. For anyone my mentor, T.R. Sullivan, said, I know more about baseball than anyone in this press box, and I don't give a you-know-what about FIP. So if you don't care about FIP, that's fair. But what is FIP? It looks at strikeout rate, walk rate, home run rate, and basically assumes if you have average luck on balls in play, kind of here's what your ERA would be. The Tigers have had very good luck on balls in play. They're against their bullpen. The BABIP this month is 204. In theory, you can't sustain that. We also saw the Tigers sustain like a 220-ish BABIP for the final 2 months of last season. Now they're throwing more sinkers than anyone, getting a ton of balls on the ground last year. They're not necessarily doing that at the same rate now. So what's going on? I don't know. How much of it is good luck? I'm not sure. I can tell you Saturday, Tyler Holton enters, gets a 5-4-3 double play ball to escape a big jam. Sunday, Tyler Holton enters, similar ground ball to third, a little harder hit, bounces into the outfield, 2-run score. Sometimes that's just how baseball works. A little correction like that was probably coming. Is this bullpen good? Like, I don't know. Is it better? I don't know. Kyle Finnegan's been great. The BABIP against him is 100. Eventually, some hits are going to fall against Kyle Finnegan. So maybe your best recipe is to have your starters keep shoving, which maybe leads us to a Jack Flaherty discussion. Or we can keep talking about the makeup of this pitching staff, which is pretty fascinating too.
Yeah, so like I guess I'm kind of I want to explore that in somewhat of a different way. So you've constantly brought up, and I give you credit for it because that is the standard of which they're playing, and it should be the goal. And that was the conversation at the trade deadline. It was that, like, can this team win the World Series? You have this record. Are you going for a World Series in 2025? And the first thing that you and everybody else goes to is bullpen. Now, I'm curious for this specific Tigers team, when your mind goes from can they win a World Series to what, think about the bullpen, what's a percentage of that being a reflection of the team as a whole with some of the other pieces? So like their hitting ability, their starting pitching ability on the top end, and what we've seen, some struggles in the bullpen, or just general bullpens matter so much in postseason. So what I'm basically what I'm getting at is, is it more of a reflection of you feeling comfortable with like the hitting profiles and the way that AJ uses like pinch hitters and all that stuff, and the Skubal aspect of it, we know Mize and all that stuff, or is it just the postseason's bullpen? It doesn't even matter about the other stuff. So bring me into your brain for a second.
I mean, I think there are two concerns when we talk about playoff baseball. It's that the lineup strikes out a lot and the bullpen doesn't strike people out. I think it's that simple. There is a world where I have some concern about the lineup facing elite level pitching in the playoffs, but generally, we know this is a pretty good offense. We know they run the bases well. Like, they've done a good job giving themselves chances. I think you're going to go into the playoffs and you're going to have some hitters who are hot and you're going to have a few guys who are cold. And any way you cut it, that's like probably how it's going to be. It feels a little more projectable maybe in terms of what you're going to get from your lineup in the playoffs. I mean, it's a short sample, so like nothing's projectable, but that's how I feel about it. Like, you kind of know that's how it's going to be. And you got to hope that maybe the guys who are clicking are Riley Green or Kerry Carpenter, or guys who can take the ball out of the ballpark and flip the scoreboard. And the bullpen seems more like the skill issue is more important. The depth becomes a lot more important. And yes, in the playoffs, there's heightened emphasis on the bullpen anyway. Relievers have never been used more often in the postseason than they are now. We know it can be dangerous to see the same relievers multiple times in a postseason series. That's where it gets to the depth. I think you can feel pretty good about Kyle Finnegan and Will Vest, but then it's like, well, Finnegan's he's missing a little more bats, throwing the splitter more, but he's not a huge strikeout guy. I kind of wish he had like a third real impact reliever, and I don't know that you can say you have that right now. It's where this Paul Sewald trade, man, I'm really interested to see what they get out of that. That could be an X factor if he's able to come off the IL and pitch like a Paul Sewald of a couple years ago, or if he's not. Like, I have a hunch that could end up being a more important move than we gave it credit for at the time. No, I don't know if that fully answers the question. Like, can you fix a Rafael Montero or something? I think you're going to have more than two guys you can really trust, and ideally some guys who can get strikeouts, because I don't know. Again, I'm not saying the Tigers can't do this, but I'm saying as it stands right now, the entire fate of this season might come down to, like, does that ground ball to third base get fielded and turn for a double play or not?
Well, we saw the debut of Drew Sommers, and it's a neat story, and congratulations on making your debut. But like, he is just another. It sounds disrespectful. I promise I don't mean it to be disrespectful. He's kind of like another guy in this wave of what we've experienced with like the back end of that bullpen being up and down and up and down, and we sit here August 25th. Do we have another month plus of this? and then some. Like, this
Oh,
is
yeah.
the way moving
Oh,
forward.
yeah, we do. Yeah, this is the strategy. This is the strategery here. Yeah, it's getting labeled pitching chaos 2.0. It's not as heightened, it's not as pronounced as like the stuff we saw down the stretch last year, but it's another way of the Tigers being a little bit outside the box. And I think I've said this before too, like sort of they've done this all year. It just didn't feel as
Yeah.
important in terms of making transactions on a series by series basis. They're doing that with a little more frequency now. They brought up Drew Summers because they needed a lefty. Who was their best lefty in the minors? Not in the option cycle like Bailey Horn. It was Drew Summers. This guy's pitched really well, made a name for himself this year. Now, he's probably going to stick around, I think, for a couple more series. You face the A's, then you face the Royals again. You're going to want that lefty arm. But we already know the list of guys still knocking on the door. Jose Urquidy could be nearing a return. You're hoping to have Seawald sometime in September. I don't know if you're ever going to see Alex Cobb, but if you really want to force that, maybe there's a chance. You have some guys already kind of in line, and then it's like, well, Alex Lang, he's in the option cycle right now, but you wouldn't hate seeing him again. Like, we are going to keep seeing some of these different arms. Sawyer Gibson Long is down there. They are going to keep doing this on a series by series, need by need basis. You're just filtering a lot of guys in and out of the bullpen. You're mixing and matching. You're using the full capability of not just your 26-man roster, not just your 40-man roster, but the whole organization to kind of squeeze every ounce, juice you can out of this orange here. And then we're seeing AJ Hinch manage the bullpen as aggressively as he has all year. Again, not necessarily new, but it just feels a little more like the dial's turned up on everything a little bit right now.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. And I was just looking this up. I mean, we're talking about pitching chaos. We're talking about all these moves. We haven't seen Keter Montero since July 25th.
Yeah, Cater seems to be like out of the picture, which is it's interesting sometimes with this organization seems to lose interesting guys, like happened with Matt Manning like a couple years ago. Cater went from being a big part of everything they were doing, building in spot starts, bullpen days, to like out of sight, out of mind. And with the off days coming up, I'm not sure there's going to be a big need for him as a starter anytime soon. I guess knock on wood that no one gets injured, but even then you have Urquidy and seems like Cobb's definitely going to be in the bullpen if and when he ever returns. But yeah, I think it's interesting, kind of the fall off of Keter Montero. He wasn't always great, but he showed you some interesting things. The Tigers, I guess you got to be cognizant of his options. I'm not sure how many times he can be optioned still. Probably one or two more times though. So I don't know. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's funny. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and then after that, we're going to talk about the full Jack Flaherty effect. But first, a word from our sponsors. The dog days of summer means it's time for the boys of summer to kick it into gear. And the best way to cash in on your baseball IQ is with DraftKings Sportsbook. Never bet on baseball before? It's simple. Pick a guy to go yard, hammer some live odds mid-game, or just ride with your squad and hope for the best. No spreadsheets, just vibes and dingers. Here is something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crowd is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
All right, coming back here. We had a week of bookends with Jack Flaherty, and boy, did we get variance. Monday against Houston, 7 innings, 3 hits, 0 runs, 9 strikeouts. Sunday against Kansas City, same mound, by the way, same mound, same ballpark, all that stuff. 5 innings, 10 hits, 8 runs, and 3, and by the way, all earned, and 3 strikeouts. So, you talked a lot about comfort level and about and about use of pitchers. Starters got to go deep. We know that Flaherty can, but it becomes a confidence level whether he will, and that's that's where I'm at.
Like we've been talking about all year, not sure what to make of Jack Flaherty. I do think it's one of the more important storylines here in August, though, because Flaherty's had a couple outings lately where you've been like, "Oh, okay, this is the real Jack Flaherty." Maybe you can feel good about this guy starting a game for you in the playoffs, right? And then it's still like, man, this guy has been really prone to giving up a 6 spot or an 8 spot. And it's hard to know what to make of it. My personal theory will come back to like this stuff just isn't prime enough anymore. It puts such a huge emphasis on his command, and you're not always going to be able to have elite command. Now, it's worth noting he has run into some bad luck throughout the year. Talking about FIP, his FIP in the second half is very good. My computer is being slow, so I don't have the number off the top of my head. But at least entering his last outing, it was really good, right? He had been pitching good baseball, been the victim of a little bit of bad luck. But then it's like, that fly ball rate's worth noting. I believe it's the highest of his career. And why do the Tigers most of the time prefer ground ball pitchers? Like, kind of goes back to FIP. A ball on the ground is more likely to become an out. It's definitely more likely to be a base hit rather than an extra base hit. You start getting the ball in the air, you start talking about damage. Flaherty at times this year has been prone to giving up hard contact. Doesn't totally show up, like the average exit velocity against him is only 89 miles an hour, but there's been times where there's been loud contact plus ball in the air. I think that's been a recipe for some of these blow up outings that we've seen.
If I believe I have the number correct, it's a 3.88 FIP.
Well, that went up big time in one outing, if that's right. Is that second half?
Just for the season. Just for the season.
All right. So still a lot better than his
record,
ERA, about full run better.
Yeah, it was 3.2 with the Tigers. 3.12, I should say, with the Tigers last year. But yeah, I'm glad you hit on the fly. He's 7th, I believe, in baseball in fly ball rate, and he gets hit hard. Like it's just not a good combination for Flaherty there, and like he has oddly become like I've said this before, where a lot of these struggles that he's had this year, and even like the successes, so the highs and lows element, kind of reminds me of a young pitcher trying to figure himself out. But the thing is, he's almost 30. He's been in the big leagues a long time. And he's been pretty feast or famine this season. And if it's game 2 of like a DS or a wild card or a CS or a World Series, and you're going to throw out a guy with an 86 ERA plus, like it's tough. That's a tough one, but he does have the experience. How much does that matter? All this intangible stuff. I mean, it was a weird game because he gave up the spot there, and then the Tigers make a comeback, and they obviously end up losing. Jack's a veteran. Jack knows like that these are kind of games in general that you don't want to squash when your offense does that. What's he like after what was he like after both of these games, actually? One where he was really good and the one where not so good.
Yeah, I always say, Jack kind of stays Jack. I don't think you see a ton of variance in his emotional state, at least talking to the media. It was pretty calm, but as you would expect, I think he felt good after a good outing and more frustrated after a bad outing. I don't think there's really a ton to go into there. Just sort of to give him credit in a way, even after yesterday, his FIP is still 2.47 in the second half. That's the 4th best in baseball. But if you want to further be confused by the Jack Flaherty experience, that FIP, 3.53, so not as good. What's the difference there? Basically, instead of using home runs allowed, it assumes an average home run rate. So how many home runs per every fly ball, are you giving up? that's higher because he's given up a lot of fly balls. And then the actual ERA is way higher. Look at the other guys that he has a similar FIP. Like, it's not in the same stratosphere. So there has been an element of bad luck. He's still striking people out, which you have to like. But I think it ultimately is the ball in the air that has been getting him in trouble.
Yeah. And again, like what you were talking about with the Tigers offense at the beginning of this podcast is like, you hope a couple guys are hot in the postseason, and it's like your home run hitters. Everybody else is hoping that too. And so when they go up against Flaherty, what's the game plan going to be? It's not going to be drag bunts. Like you're going to try to take advantage of that hard hit rate if you're the other team. So this will probably even out to something more reasonable by the time that we get to postseason play.
Been saying that all year. I don't know. I don't know.
But
look at Jack Flaherty's postseason last year, Kieran. He had a couple great outings, and he had a couple horrible outings. Maybe that's what this is going to expect. Maybe that was part of the strategy when the Tigers got Chris Paddock. Maybe it was just like, well, he's probably going to give us 4 great outings and 4 bad outings, but we're going to bank on 4 of those. Like, that's going to be 4 games we can win. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's part of the strategy, but it's kind of interesting to think about. And at least this year, it's kind of been part of the Jack Flaherty profile.
Well, speaking of Paddock, was this weekend like his baptism into AJ Hinch and Chris Fetter?
Yeah, I think it was. I don't know if you can be mad after leaving the game after 5 innings, after like the amount of loud contact you were giving up. Like, I was watching that, I was like, all right, get him out of here. Get him out of here. Versus Flaherty, who was allowed to pitch into the 6th, despite also not looking good. I guess just trying to save the pin. The pin wasn't that taxed, though. The game doesn't matter enough right now to litigate it, but I didn't love the decision to leave Flaherty out there for as long as he was left out there. And I think it speaks to a lack of confidence in your 2nd and 3rd tier bullpen arms. But yeah, Paddock, but I liked what he said after the game. He was like, yeah, I was a little frustrated coming out of the game. I went to the tunnel, took a deep breath, thought, okay, we have the lead. We have a good bullpen. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And I respect AJ's decision. Like, I trust his decision. Seems like they talked about it a little bit. Seems like it was something that was handled, at least from what I can tell, really professionally on all sides. Maybe something that builds a little trust, builds a little bit of a relationship going forward. But yeah, certainly an indoctrination to how all this works in Detroit.
I mean, I imagine, I've never seen this, with my own eyes, but I imagine that if a player, particularly a pitcher, wants to like have a discussion with AJ for the why, he'll tell you the why. Like,
he will. You may not like the why, but he'll give it to you.
He's gonna let you know what the why is, and it's kind of up to you on how you handle it. So,
but I think generally players, like we've talked about it, I think with Austin Jackson on here before, like one thing I always hear from players, like their least favorite thing is to kind of not know why. And to be told, hey, you did great, but we took you out. Or, hey, you're doing great, but we're sending you down. Like, that's not a good feeling. That leaves you frustrated. That leaves you puzzled. And if someone lays it out to you why you're going down because you don't throw first pitch strikes, or why you're getting pulled from this game because why would we have you go a 3rd time through this order? Like, you may not like it, but at least it makes sense. At least it gives you a little something to like aim for next time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to keep with the pitching theme and discuss tonight's starter, Tarik Skubal, and his routine. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Kratz, if you need to pay rent for your apartment and you're not getting anything for it, then you probably haven't heard of Built.
You have to pay rent every single month. Why not get some points that you can redeem for other things that are a lot more fun than paying rent, like flights, hotels, Uber rides?
That's right. And it doesn't stop there. Built is about making your entire neighborhood more rewarding. You can dine at your favorite local restaurants, and you can earn additional points with VIP treatment at certain fitness studios. And you can also enjoy exclusive experiences that are just for Built members. They announce them every month. Built is turning a monthly expense into an opportunity to earn rewards and discover the best that your neighborhood has to offer. Your rent is finally working for you, and you can earn points on rent and around your neighborhood wherever you call home by going to joinbuilt.com/foul. That's joinbilt.com/FOUL. Make sure to use our URL so they know that FT sent you. Get after it.
All right, coming back here. We've heard, we know Tarik Skubal is a workhorse. We've read stories about his routine and, working out. And then it was on a recent national broadcast, they talked about his desire to be like a 200 inning guy. And so I love that you wrote this story. And I'll just read the headline and kind of have you dive into the process for us. But how Tigers' Tarik Skubal is managing his routine as the innings pile up. And we know Skubal's a thoughtful guy. We know that the Tigers take this stuff very seriously. That's kind of why we're talking about it in a way. But Skubal, it's kind of a dichotomy a little bit. Skubal intense, wants to go, but then he's having to be kind of the opposite of that sort of machismo meathead mentality in order to take care of his body. So really fascinating stuff. How'd you go about reporting this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was naturally interested how Tarik was just managing things based on the anecdote he shared at the end of last year, which is that last year after the All-Star break, he went to the Tigers training staff and he was basically like, hey, I'm not recovering as well after starts. I'm not feeling good as good physically. Like what can we do? And they really revamped his routine. I had someone in the league tell me that he wasn't even throwing bullpens in the second half. I asked Tarik about that. He said, I always like to touch the mound, even if it's for as little as 5 pitches. So it sounds like sometimes rather than throwing a full, a normal bullpen's probably about 30 pitches, he'll get on there, throw 5 pitches, say, hey, I'm good. He explained it as just it's not necessarily some huge overhaul, but we're going to, eliminate some sets from your workout routine. You're going to spend a little more time in the training room. Really fine details, but just to make sure he continues to feel good. And it's kind of more on a start-by-start basis. I do think every pitcher in the league kind of does this, but it seems like Skubal has become really in tune with his body and how he's feeling and what's a good feeling, what's a bad feeling, to where, so I was just curious if he had done anything similar this year in the second half, especially as you continue to go deep into games, especially as you're thinking about playing for all of October this year. And interestingly enough, he was I actually made those changes a month into the season. He said he started feeling worn down a month into the season. I don't want anyone to take that out of context, Skubal's out of gas, blah, blah, blah.
Weak.
Because, and he did have a couple starts that weren't his best, but then he kind of shoved against Hunter Brown, so I think he's going to be all right. I think that's a good sign that a month into the year, this guy was all right, I'm not feeling quite as good. Let's tweak some stuff. And it's kind of an ongoing thing. But I almost think there's a lesson to be learned here, life lessons from Tarik Skubal. Because he learned some of this through experience, man, through trying to push through it when you don't feel good. He's well, that's how you end up hurt. That's how you end up not performing as well. He mentioned throwing 89 miles per hour in 2021, which I definitely forgot he ever did. But Tarik Skubal has thrown all of 189 mile per hour fastballs in the major leagues and several more that were 90, 91. But he said that's because you think you're not good enough in terms of changing your routine when you're a young player. And he said that's the whole balance of the mental side of baseball. Oh, I'm not good enough. I need to go work more. Now through some age, through some success, through some failure, he says, no, you're plenty good. You've done what you're trying to do a million times. Maybe work a little bit less so you feel better, so your body can go out there and do it in the game. That's kind of become his whole thing, and clearly it works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a like the larger picture there that I would take from this and reading the story, and I encourage everybody to go read it on The Athletic, is that if there were ever a scenario for somebody to kind of be like, no, I'm not going to change like 1 month and, like what, 6 starts ish, give or take into the season. I had this plan. I'm going to stick with it more. I'm at least going to get to Memorial Day. You know what I mean? But coming off last season, Triple Crown, Cy Young, all that stuff. So like, if there were ever a time to be stubborn and justifiably stubborn, it would be
And
this.
Turks can be stubborn.
but there's a level of self-awareness there. There's a level of maturation that I actually think is quite admirable, and honestly should serve as an example for other guys, not just pitchers. I mean, this metaphor applies to probably any hitter on the team, in the game. Hell, it could apply to, pitching staff and managers. You know what I mean? Like this metaphor extends out to a lot of things.
Yeah. I think I asked AJ about like 2 or 3 players this week, Troy Melton being one of them. And he keeps using the word adaptable. That's been a favorite word of his lately. And if you watch the Tigers play, I guess that's no surprise. All these guys are adaptable in terms of their roles, but also being adaptable in terms of your routine or your pitch mix, or like just not being afraid to make changes for the sake of getting better. That's something a lot of guys on this team have done well, and that's something the Tigers organization has like somehow cultivated a pretty good open-mindedness that's obviously serving them well. For as much as we spent like 20 minutes kind of like casting doubt on the bullpen, I do think it's worth noting like the Tigers played some swaggy baseball this week. That Riley Green home run over the weekend, like you could feel the Royals just having their souls sucked out of them. One thing that does bode very well for the Tigers in the postseason, more often than not, man, this has become a team that just gives you nothing, that will capitalize on every mistake. Zach McKinstry, dude can run the bases, man. He had himself a heck of a weekend. Those are the obvious strengths of this team, and they've really come back in full force over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, let's wrap up here with speaking of guys that had themselves a nice weekend. Jake Rogers only played 1 game, but it was a memorable one for a couple of reasons. But he had himself 2 hits. He had a couple of ribbies. These are obviously it's not like headline stuff or whatever, but for a guy who's kind of been through it this season, who hasn't gotten regular playing time, and therefore like his offensive output is irregular. It was fun to see. It was fun to see, and I wanted to bring him up because there's a lot of ways that the Jake Rogers 2025 season could have gone sour for a lot of guys. Like he lost his. You say you never lose your job due to injury. Like he lost his job due to injury, and Dingler took it and ran with it, and all the credit in the world to Dylan Dingler this year. But the backside is that Jake Rogers is no longer the revered catcher of Tarik Skubal, catcher of record in a way, and he, by all accounts, has not let that kind of sink the team, any of that stuff. And so anytime he has himself some success, I think that's awesome, because he's a guy that just feels like is important to the team and the makeup, even without the same kind of season that we've seen previously, especially last year.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm sure there's a part of Jake that doesn't love not playing all the time. He talked a little bit about the difficulty of staying ready, of especially when you're in the batter's box, being in a rhythm. Jake has not been very good at the plate. He did some nice things this weekend, but that's the reality. It's easy to forget this is a guy who hit 20 home runs in the major leagues. 2023, he hit 221 with 21 homers. That will play at the catcher position. And he's been a sub 200 hitter in the 2 years since. The power hasn't quite been the same. I think the patience at the plate hasn't quite been the same. That's leading very much to the profile of a fringy backup catcher. But Jake's still a very good defender. The metrics don't quite show it as much this year, which actually surprises me. I still think he's great back there. Some of that's a product of playing time too, though. You're not going to have as many blocks above average if you're not playing all that often. But I think there's a part of Jake that gets it, that looks at Dingler and is like, yeah, I'm just, I'm probably not going to hit 280, like I think he is realistic about how good Dylan Dingler is and like understands his role in this team, has stayed a positive presence in the clubhouse. And you got to love guys like that, right? Those are important guys. Jake said he has a newfound appreciation for the backup catcher role. He's kind of built for the backup catcher role in a lot of ways. I'd love it, if he could unlock the bat a little more. But like I think you have to give him some degree of props for, like you said, not letting this thing go south, for still being there when he's needed, for still calling a heck of a good game and being an asset, even if it's not the Jake Rogers who was hitting 20 home runs.
Yeah. And like we've seen, you talk about like postseason stuff and aspirations. We've seen some crazy things happen from guys who haven't done as much like at the plate, come up in big spots for whatever reason and come through. Tigers certainly have their history of doing that. Wouldn't that be fun to see? And wouldn't surprise me at all.
I think it's worth talking about. Like, do you want Jake as your backup catcher next season? Do you want the guy who's hitting 180? I guess I'm a little biased here, but I think yes. Like, I think you're getting good defense. How big of an upgrade are you really going to get from some other catcher at the plate? Probably going to be minimal. Jake does still have as much power upside as probably any of the options that are going to be at your disposal. And he's an important like glue guy in the clubhouse. Totally confident rolling with the Jake Dingler catching tandem next season.
Yeah, I mean, if we see it like this, and you hope for a little bit more offensive production, and maybe that can lead to a little bit more balanced playing time. I would say
Dingler might be too good. Dingler's this team's positional leader in F4. Like he's killing it, man.
Yeah, credit to him. But this feels like a catching tandem that I doubt most fan bases and coaching staffs have as much confidence as the Tigers and Tigers fans do in these two guys. So good on Jake. Happy for him. And yeah, I'm not really interested in changing that dynamic for all the intangible stuff and even some of the upside stuff that probably is still in there. Whew. All right. Anything else, Cody, before we jet out of here?
No, I think that covers it. Tigers are going to be on the road here for a little bit. Let's see if they can keep playing some swaggy ball.
Swaggy Tigers. Maybe that's the new one. Swaggy
Hey, I like that.
Swaggy Tigers. Let's get it started. All right. You can follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Cody Stavenhagen. I am at Kieran_Steckley. Pod pages at Tiger Territory _ YouTube, Instagram, Apple, Spotify. You guys know what to do. We appreciate all of you. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I am Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great day.